Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi friends, and welcome to another weekly wrap up. And today we have a normal amount of books to talk about. Last week was a double week, and I do have to say there won't be a weekly wrap up next week because I'll be out of town for birthday weekend that we're having for my grandfather. So in 2 weeks you'll have another double one, so be prepared for another huge one. I'll still have a video up on Saturday, I assume, but it won't be a weekly wrap up. It'll be something else that I come up with. But today we still have a good amount of books to talk about. I think there's 11 or 12 to get through. Some of them are rereads, and one of them is a new favorite, which if you watch my video that went up the other day, you'll know what it is, but I won't spoil it in case you don't know yet. But I do have a new 6-star read that I just loved so much. So we will get into that just as soon as I welcome a few new supporters to the channel. And then for my channel members, one of my patrons actually joined here. We have Megan M, who she's actually a proud producer of the channel. So Megan, you support me in so many ways. I appreciate you so much. And then we have someone who their screen name is just me, like literally it's M-E, the word me. So whoever you are, me out there, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Channel members get early access to videos. They get access to a monthly chat with me. They get to vote on video topics, things like that. And patrons, of course, get an exclusive review each month. They get to also vote on that book that I exclusively read. There are vlogs, as well as just pretty much like access to me whenever they want is how it kind of works out. So yeah, thank you to everyone who helps keep this going. I am 100% fan funded channel basically. I mean, nothing that I do would be happening without you guys, so I really appreciate it. But let's go ahead and get in because, of course, I have so many things to talk about, including a new favorite, as I said, which means we're going to be here for a while. So make sure you get a snack, your breakfast, get a coffee here. I have a chocolate caramel iced coffee to keep me going. And let's jump right into it. So I have Trick by Natalia Jaster. I was very kindly sent this by the author and Nerd Fam. They sent me a special edition hardcover of Trick. She had a special cover done like this for book signings, and I was lucky enough to get a book box with it. I have heard of Trick before. I'd seen it around, but I had never even really made an attempt to read it. But because this was enemies to lovers and forced proximity, which are both tropes for the readathon that I am participating in, I was like, let's go ahead and give it a try. So I was working my way into this one. Now, there's a whole bunch that goes into the history of this book that I'm not going to get into with it. Besides, this was once written as kind of a YA new adult level book. There wasn't any explicit sex in it apparently, and it was this like I don't know if it was a slow burn, what it was. I don't know what it was because I never heard about this book until it was already in this format. But it was originally written that way, and now it has been kind of reworked apparently, and there is steam in it. I mean, there definitely was sex scenes added in it, but the sex scenes were like not the most interesting part of the story. Not that they weren't good, there were some good ones, but I mean, this story really has a lot going on. And again, I wasn't around for if there was any controversies people were fielding or whatever. From some of the reviews, I could tell there was some questioning that people had. But this book takes on a pretty heavy topic within a fantasy world. And though I'm not someone who can speak on if this accurately represented those people or made them feel seen or people who love those people, I have no idea. But for me, as someone who is on the outside of that, I felt great compassion and love and anger towards what was happening to these people in here. And I think that you will too when you read it. So this is about a princess of the, I think she's in Autumn Court or Spring. I don't even know now. Does it say which one she's from? I don't know. She's a princess, and I know they're in a different court for this like celebration that's happening, and they've recently lost her father, so it's just her. All of a sudden my voice is wanting to be all croaky for no reason. And Trick is the court jester of the court that they go to stay at. He is bisexual. He leaves these ribbons for people that he wants to have trysts with. And she finds a ribbon on, I think it's like on her doorknob or something like that. And she's super offended because she's not interested in this jester at all. Has no, you know, there's some like intense flirting coming from his side of things, but she's just not interested. And through some situations in the book, they actually end up in the forest at the same time. She's actually following him somewhere, and there's an incident. He's about to get attacked. She ends up saving him from this attack, and she gets injured herself. And when she wakes up from this attack, she is actually in, his name is Poet. I think I might have called him Trick. He plays tricks. His name is Poet. She wakes up actually in his private home, which is not in the castle. And she discovers a secret that he's keeping. And I will tell you that secret now because it gets to the point of why I loved this book so much. But if you don't want to know anything about it, go ahead and skip ahead now. But he has a son. He has a son who is just, I think like 4 or 5 years old, and he's special needs. That's the best way to explain it. He is special needs. I believe in one of the reviews, they say what the special needs that he has is, because it is related to a real life syndrome or whatever. I think it said Williams syndrome. I'll put it here what it is because I don't want to make that, but it is based on this. But we're in a fantasy world, so people with special needs, mental disabilities, you know, people who would have Down syndrome or just not appear normal to everyone else, they are actually basically wards of the kingdom. Okay, now some kingdoms treat that with a little more dignity, but you are still not owned by yourself is what it means. You're a property of the kingdom if you are. And in some kingdoms, that is straight up treated like you are a slave, you are kept in a prison, you are made to work at work camps, you're very mistreated. But they're all varying levels of dehumanization. We'll just say that. That's what's happened. So Poet, this was a child from like a one-night stand. The mother left it on his doorstep. He had found a woman to take, like this maid type woman to take care of his son. And as he grew older, it became clear that he was special needs. And Poet was in no way going to let his son be a ward of the state, or I keep saying state, but you know what I mean, like a ward of this kingdom. And so he hides him away. And now our heroine Briar, she now knows this secret. Now she's from a kingdom where they're a little more, as I said, a little kinder to this, but these people in her kingdom still are also wards of the kingdom. They're treated with slightly more dignity. Like I said, they still belong to them. It's not good. And one of the things that Briar finds out is that a lot of who Poet is and this flirty persona, this kind of like whoring behavior he has a purpose with it. And this purpose is all about, you know, getting freedom and justice for the special needs people who are being mistreated this way, because he wants his son to be free. And this now becomes a cause that Briar wants to take up as well. So this whole book, you know, it's them falling in love. It's her finding out the secret, her realizing so much about him, and then how are they going to do this? So this is just the beginning of their story. There is a like happy for now by the end of this one. But there's still so much left to go. And I will tell you, you will fall in love with Poet's son. He is the sweetest little boy. Oh, and I think that's something the author does extremely well, because there are parts of this story, as I said, that, again, I don't know what the original was like and how that played out. But this one is just very, like, they are very sex focused on themselves at certain points. As well as we know they're trying to work on this certain cause they have, but in the beginning of the book, there's not a real urgency to make it happen. And then there are some things that make them accelerate what their plans might be. And is Briar willing to risk her position? Would her mother back her up if she made a move? Like there's a lot to consider. And so again, this has a happy for now, but you're still left wondering, okay, well, we may have found a solution for this one little boy, but what about all the rest? What about everyone else in all the other kingdoms? It can't be okay to just save a few. What about everyone else? So I thought this was very intelligent in that case. I did think some of the smut just didn't quite like work for me, especially once we knew what the stakes were. It was like, why are we wasting time getting each other off, you know? But I also get it because you can't make changes in the government and things like that so quickly, but I don't know. So I ended up at a 4-star with this though, because I've never read a story that tried to take that on before, you know? There's some things in a fantasy world that we just don't try to get into, right? We use fantasy books as an allegory for those things, right? We use paranormal stories as a way to touch those topics from another way, right? We make them not feel as painful or as touchy by making the other a vampire, by making the other a werewolf. Well, it straight up is a little boy, a person with special needs who's being mistreated. He's not some kind of other that you can use an allegory for or a example of, right? Because that's a lot of what like vampire and werewolf paranormals represent. They represent people who've been othered by society, who are forced into the shadows and are seen as like villains because of that, you know? You can find many books that is what they're doing. And in this one, the author, we're in a fantasy world, but we're faced with that like right up in our face, like what's happening to them. So yeah, I ended up at a 4 with this because of that. And it's a like it's a 4 on the spice scale. Our heroine is a virgin in the beginning. She certainly ain't by the end of this, and they're very sexual with each other. The court as well. This is a few things I saw in the reviews. I didn't read a ton of the reviews before I read it because I knew I wanted to read this pretty book no matter what. But there were a few things where I saw people say that they think it did get too sexual when it went to this one. Not just sex between those two, but the court itself was made very sensual and very sex focused in a lot of ways. So who knows? But I know the author in her author's note, she does say that when she first wrote this book, she wasn't like comfortable writing sex yet. She didn't know how she could make it work. And part of rewriting the series was writing what she'd always wanted it to be. So I don't know, but I had an okay time with it, and I will continue this series should I have the time. I know she's planning to possibly do audiobooks for these. Like, she was throwing around a couple questions on her Instagram that made me think she has plans to do audios for them. Because I do know that part of the reason of this special edition is that there was a new book coming out that's going to be about a new romance. So there's 4 books in this series now. The first 3 are about Poet and Briar, and then there's a new direction I guess she's going. So I know that. Alrighty, moving right along, we had a reread of Soar High by Cherise Sinclair. I had been rereading these books the last 4 months for one of my patrons, so I annotated this beauty right here. This is the 4th book in the Sons of the Survivalist. I love this series. This series gets better and better with each book for me. You do have to start at the beginning because it is a kind of continuous journey and each book really folds into the next. But these are 4 adopted brothers who live in Rescue, Alaska. They were adopted by this gruff ex-army sergeant. I think he was a ranger as well, and he adopted these 4 boys. Well, he basically stole them is what he did. They were in a very unsafe foster home where they were being abused, and he happened to come across them. And on a whim, this grumpy old man takes these 4 boys, moves them to Alaska, and teaches them how to survive. And now it's many years later, and their adoptive father is gone, and he left them with a charge to rescue Alaska because he said, I think it's still worth it. And he owned a good portion of the town, and so he left that all to his boys, and they saved this town. And it is really beautiful because you watch them from the beginning. They've lived near this town or by it for many years, but they haven't become really a part of it. And by the end of this series, the whole town loves them, and they love the town, and they each have found their love. And so this one is about the last brother, Hawk, who he's the most kind of PTSD stricken, like he has some of the heaviest scars of them all. And then we have Kit and her son Eric were rescued from a cult in a previous book. That cult very much wants revenge for what the Sons of the Survivalists did to take them down and rescue Kit. And so she's healing from some serious injuries from that, and her little boy is, trying to cope what he witnessed as well. And Eric particularly connects with Hawk and just doesn't want to leave Hawk at all. And that really puts Hawk in an interesting position because he's not been around a ton of kids. Most kids are scared of him because he's scarred and he's cranky and he's not the nicest man to be around. But Eric sees him as good people and he really latches onto him. So I really like this because of course he thinks Kit is beautiful, but Kit is going to be very, she was very much abused. She has been very beaten down. She feels like a failure because of not only what she went through, but what her son had to go through because of choices she made. Like, so much guilt she's carrying, just so much weight. It's so sad. But Hawk really, they help each other so much. So this is my favorite one in the series, but it's one of those that it's your favorite because you've read the others. This series isn't for everyone. It's not the smoothest storytelling. It's not, there's some cheesy parts in it. But I love a series where the good guys win. And this is a series that, like, the bad guys just look pathetic all the time. And you kind of wonder how they keep being able to come at them. But this one has my favorite. It has a full-on, like, battle at the end of this. It does. There's a straight-up fight for survival at the end. And all these little things that we've been learning about throughout the series, like the different lessons that they've learned when they were in the military and when they lived with Sarge and all those things, they put into use. And the town that they've been pouring their time in for these past few years, the town really gives it back to them and is willing to risk their lives for them as well. So I love this series so much. It's a great series to read in the wintertime because it is like forced proximity surviving, though we're still in a small town. Like, it's not surviving in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, that's one of my patrons picked that because we love that series together. But I know it's not for everyone. I gush about it and people go read it and they're like, oh, this is weird. But someone's going to feel that about everything I like, so I can't worry about that. But that's a 5-star book for me. It's a 2.5 on the spice scale. Definitely some trigger warnings for domestic abuse, violence, threats of essay. There's been essay in the past, and there's danger to children. And as I said, you have to read these in order. Alrighty. Then we have My Favorite Boss by Melanie Moreland. Ooh, this one's shiny. This is kind of a bummer to me that this is shiny. I'm just going to whine for a second because the first book in this series, which is called the My Favorite series, and it's My Favorite Kidnapper, that one is like matte, and I love that. I hate when books are shiny. But the reason this is different is that this series got picked up by Waterhouse from Melanie Moreland. And I think that's fantastic that it got picked up. So I was sent a lovely book box of this, which was so sweet. I got sent some really cute stuff in there. And I've been really looking forward to this one. I do actually have the audiobook too, so I probably will be reading this in the near future because I need to review this for the audio as well. But this is an office romance. If you can't tell, My Favorite Boss. This is a secretary and her grumpy boss. And it starts out with Alexander Bain. He really needs an assistant. He keeps running through his assistants, and he ends up interviewing this woman who she's late because, like, she missed the bus and she's just not having a great go of it. But he interviews her and she's just like unflappable. She's very good at her job. She's very competent. She's very like focused on everything. And Alexander can't help but be impressed by her. So Maggie is her name. So yeah, so she starts being his assistant, and slowly he starts to become just very enamored with her and how competent she is and how on top of everything she is. And he can't help but start to be drawn to her. And so it's one of those where things kind of boil over, where one time they're honestly like kind of arguing and then they finally like kiss. This also has, let me find some I forgot. I got some beautiful page overlays for this. Like, look at them right there. They're so cute. And yeah, it was very sweet. There was no super surprises in here. They keep getting in compromising positions when HR happens to walk by, which is super funny. They eventually adopt a cat together. I will say one of the things that was bumming me out just a little bit was that, look at this adorable kitty. He's on like all of the art, like no joke. This adorable kitty is on all of the artwork, but we don't adopt the kitty for a long time. So I will say, I was like, when are we gonna get Hedgie? His name is Hedge, like a hedgerow. And we don't get him for a while, but this was adorable. This is a rom-com. It's funny. There's not a lot of stress in their relationship besides the, like, how can you work for me and me be your boss, and her very nervous about what people will think about her. He has a mother who's very like wants him to marry the right person, and he's like, screw you, I'm not going to marry who you want. Like there's just like, there's some things that are made to be conflicts in here that it doesn't really work because it's like, sure, your mother's bitchy, but we don't care that she is. He doesn't like his mom. He's not trying to impress his mom. So when his mom is being bitchy, so what? You know, he's a billionaire. He doesn't have to listen to his mom, right? There's nothing holding over his head. So when his mom shows up and is mean, we can literally just slam the door in mom's face and say goodbye, right? And when she says mean things to Maggie about like trying to sleep her way to the top or whatever, we can easily cut the mom out of our life because we don't care, right? So there's just things like that where it's like, how is this even a conflict, okay? Well, then there is I'll just tell you too, there's an accidental pregnancy in this, and he had he wanted to be with her, but he doesn't believe in love. Like, he's literally like, I want to be with you. I want you to be this or whatever. But he straight up tells her, he's like, I don't believe in love. I don't believe in it. And I hate that as an excuse. Like, I really don't like that. It's so dumb. Who actually believes you don't believe in love? That is a convention that gets put into romance novels because we think it's an obstacle when it's not. Because then he's told her he doesn't believe in that, but he really wants to be with her. If you don't believe in love, why do you want to be with her? Because that's telling her you just want to have sex. He doesn't say that to her, but like, if you don't believe in love and you don't want to be with, like, you want to be with her, but you don't believe in love or believe in that can work, you're basically telling her that you only want her for sex. Again, he doesn't say that, but as a smart cookie, I can imply that. Then when we have the oopsie baby, which I love an oopsie baby, so I don't have problems with that. He's like, oh, well, you have to move in with me and you have to marry me and all these things. And she's like, you told me you don't believe in love, and now that I'm pregnant, I have to be with you. Like, he doesn't know what he's saying. And so I don't feel like we needed him to ever say he doesn't believe in love. I think that we didn't need his mom showing up to be angry and cruel if there wasn't a bigger purpose. Like, if the mom was maybe holding an inheritance above his head, or the mom had something to blackmail him with, or one of those things, then the mother would feel like a threat. But instead, she just seems petty and cruel and annoying. Like, why is she there? So I know in rom-coms we're not always looking for the most intelligent reasons for that to happen. But even My Favorite Boss, which was honestly kind of nonsensical, it's a mafia man who sees a woman who bakes really great cakes and he wants to kidnap her and take her. That is like an irrational type of story, right? It's like it's one of those that's a bonkers plot. So you just ride it, right? This is coming from me. I love a bonkers plot, okay? He decides he wants her, and to convince her to not like freak out about the fact that she was kidnapped, he's like, you're gonna bake me a cake and I'm gonna pay you to bake me cakes, right? Really, his whole purpose is he wants to seduce her and keep her. Like, so he comes up. But the guy doesn't believe in love. It's a sticky situation because she's his secretary. Things could go very badly for her. But he adopts a cat that they share, and once she's pregnant, he wants to marry her. Like, Melanie can do better. That's why the thing is, for me, like, I've read a lot of bonkers plots. I've read lots of rom-coms from her, and this one I'm like, what were you doing, hon? What were we doing? So I ended up with this one at a 4-star. It probably would have been less if it wasn't an arc. It was a 3 on the spice scale, and I said, like, there's a toxic parent. There's a parent with dementia. Oh, that is a hard one. Maggie's father has dementia. There is a death of a parent, and there's a surprise pregnancy. So it's cute. A lot of people are giving this just gold star. If you want to read one where you don't have to think, you love a very grumpy grump and a sunshine, and you want to see a woman get spoiled, but with no real, like, plot going on, it was cute. Okay, it was adorable. I would never discourage you from reading a Melanie Moreland because she's a delight of a human, and that book, it will make you smile. It'll make you smile. I love when he's a cat dad, but I expect a little bit more from her stories because I love a lot of her books. I do. All right, next up, we had another reread, and this was just a little quick one. I am rereading this series and annotating it for a patron. And also, Beacon comes out October 11th, and I just got the arc of that last night. And I can't wait to read it. I absolutely cannot read it yet. I have to read 3 other arcs before I'm allowed to read it. But anyway, this one is Hero. This is one of the standalone novellas within the series. any of these books you can really read when you want, but they do go kind of chronologically through time. Like the earliest books in the series are like 3 and 4 years after Impact. This one we're up to 6 years before Impact, or after Impact. And with like Beacon, which is coming, we're 10 years after Impact. So that's more why you should read them in order, is for that. But this one is nice and quick. And this is one, I've only read this one once. All the other books I've read, well, some of them 4 or 5 times, but this is one I'd only read once. And so I forgot how much I loved this one. I really did. This one had me tearing up a couple times too. And this one is Esther, who she was in college when the asteroid hit. And she ends up in a hunting cabin with her mom, her stepdad's parents, one great grandparent, her stepdad's brother, and the stepbrother's girlfriend and eventually child. And so all these people are trapped in like a 1-bedroom hunting cabin. And they're able to fish and hunt there, but slowly through the years, it's down to just Esther and her stepdad's brother, Zed, and Zed's 4-year-old daughter, Rena. Katrina's her name, so Rena's her name. And when we see kind of the first chapter of this, we're seeing it a year after Impact, and her and Zed really don't get along. She thinks he was like a playboy and kind of a slob and like wasting his life away. And she thought he was very reckless to have gotten his girlfriend pregnant at such a dangerous time, and just didn't make the best decisions. But now, 4 years later, Zed and Rena are what her whole life revolves around. So her and Zed still sometimes have a contentious like relationship. She still in her head thinks she doesn't like him very much, but we know that's not true. He's one of her only companions she has, and she adores his little girl. They both would do absolutely anything for her. But it's very clear that he's into her and blah, blah. And like all of these books, and pretty much any book you've read from Claire Kent, when they have a moment of sexual tension and it boils over, they decide to basically be like friends with benefits. Like, why aren't we getting joy while we live here? Now, the other bit of part of plot of this one, which is what connects it with the other books in this series, is where they're staying at their cabin. The lake that they're by is running out of fish. There's not really any animals to hunt. They have kind of depleted the neighborhoods that are within walking distance of where they are, and they are going to need to move. But they have no idea where to move to, or if they'll even find another safe place, and so it would be very risky for them. And again, they have a little girl with them, and they don't want to put her in danger. You could run into dangerous people, you could run into having no food and them starving, like they don't know. But on one of the supply runs she takes, she runs into someone we know, and I won't spoil that. But the whole point of this series, and Haven, which is the first book in the series, is there is a place where good people gather and have created community. And as I said, that's where this will connect. So loved rereading that one. That is a 4.5 star for me, and it's a 2.5 on the spice scale. There is some attempted murder and death of loved ones, and possible like SA from people on the road. Okie doke. Now it's time, everyone, to get to my new favorite book. And I was so kindly sent this by one of my patrons, because as soon as I started talking about it, they sent it to me from my wish list. Although I do want to get the man cover of this one as well, which I couldn't find when I was originally putting it on my wish list. I had to go through, you guys know, sometimes if there's 2 covers listed for a book on Amazon, one of them is like a hidden one. So I do want the cover that has the male on the front, but for now I have this beautiful cover of it. So this is Sovereign by Rhea Morris Edwards, okay? And this is a book that I just found at random on an Instagram, it had a bunch of dark romances on it, and I saw these bullhorns, and I was like, ooh, and they said it was dark romances. So I was like, ooh, this looks like a dark cowboy, give me more. And when I read the blurb, and it said that it was, this hero is obsessed, and the heroine is currently married to someone, but he's going to make sure that he can have her and make her his. And then I read the description of this, that it is a BDSM romance. It says this: well, this is a BDSM romance for the purpose of the storyline and character development. There are instances where BDSM is not practiced properly. This is fiction, so please don't look to this, blah, blah, blah. That's what a lot of authors will say. And I was like, oh, it's a BDSM cowboy romance. And I immediately started thinking of like Buckled, right? And Booted, the Pam Godwin ones. And I have had a lot of arcs to read this month, as you know. And I just got a little bit itchy and was like, I want to read this. So I think it was like Tuesday night or something. I was like, I'm just going to start it. And it was really difficult to stop. I read it until 3 a.m. and then the next day I woke up at 8 o'clock. Well, the same day I woke up at 8 o'clock and I finished it. And this one isn't super long. The ebook, like, it's only 330 pages, but there's so much packed into this story. And as I mentioned, I filmed a video yesterday talking about this book as well, and I talk about it for like 25 minutes in that video. And I know I'm not saying I'm going to be short-windowed, but I'm not going to go into as many details here as I did in that one, because that one was the first time I was talking about it and I just had so much to say. I won't go into as much with this one here, so I'll link that video here if you want even more thoughts. But I'll have a link to this down below. I always have a link to all the books that I talk about, so if you want to get yourself a copy of it, I highly recommend it. Okay, either this cover or the other cover. It's amazing. But this is about Gerard Sovereign, who he owns the biggest ranch in, I don't know, what state are we even in? I don't even know where we live. I should have figured that out ahead of time. Are they in Montana, Wyoming? Where are we? I don't even think it says. Anyway, he owns like the biggest ranch in the area. And then there is Kira Garrison, who her husband and his 2 brothers own another chunk of ranches. Now, her father used to own a ranch, and when her father died when she was only 17, when she turned 18, she married her husband, Clint Garrison, and he took over her family farm, and she became his dutiful little wife, available for him to fuck whenever he wants. She does his cooking and his cleaning without complaint, and she is basically his Stepford wife, is what she is. She doesn't really have anything that she does for herself. He doesn't, let's say, physically abuse her, but neither does he pay her any attention except when he needs someone warm in his bed at night. We're just being real about it. And one day, where this starts off, Kira is asked to bring food and drink into the study because Clint is meeting with Gerard and they are doing some deal. She's not sure what this deal is. It's not supposed to be any of her business what this deal is, but she brings it in, and Clint like asks her to stand, like wait and stand in the corner. And Gerard, who is this mountain of a sexy man, is observing how Clint is kind of treating his wife, which again, not physically abusive, but very dismissive of her. And, you know, why is he making her like stay? Anyway, Gerard notices these things, and he also notices how beautiful she is, even in her demure dress she's supposed to wear, not supposed to show any skin or anything sexual about her. And Gerard is intrigued. So he's having this meeting with Clint, and he actually asks, he's like, I need to use the restroom. And Clint is like, okay, show it to him. And when they're out in the hall, she's like, you don't need to use the bathroom, do you? And he's like, no. And he asks her, is your husband a mad dog? And she doesn't really respond or know what to say. But there's a few more things they say back and forth, and she feels very like intimidated, but also extremely turned on by this man. And that's an interesting feeling for her because her own husband doesn't really do it for her anymore. As I said, he doesn't really give 2 shits about what she likes or not. And that night, going to bed, it's Gerard that she's picturing when she's touching herself that night. But she locks that away because it's like, well, I'm a married woman and I have what I have, and that's how it is. But the next day, Gerard and Clint meet, and they're out on the range together, and they're supposed to be moving some cattle around, something like that. And near the end of the day, a knock comes to the door for Kira, and she learns that her husband has died out on the trail, that he fell off and was crushed in a stampede. And not only has he died and left her the home, but he's left her his entire fortune, cutting out both of his brothers, which was a very interesting choice for him to make. So now she feels free. She's like, oh my God, I'm free. I have all of this, and I'm not married to this freak, and I can ride my horses that I want, and I can do what I want, and like, it's amazing. She doesn't have any big things she wanted, but she hasn't been free ever. But 7 months in, things aren't going so great. Her two brothers-in-law are harassing her, trying to get her to hand over the land, and they don't believe that she should have this, and blah, blah, blah. And she gets a letter from Gerard inviting her to a meal at Sovereign Ranch. And she's very intimidated by this, but she can't forget all the tingly feelings that he made her feel, and she wants to know what he needs. So she goes to this dinner with him, and she discovers that all that money she thought her husband left her, well, it belongs to Gerard, because he borrowed that money from the bank, and Sovereign owns the bank, and so she owes lots and lots of money. And he says, don't you worry, don't you worry. If you agree to sign this contract and be my submissive for a year, I will forgive your debt. And I mean, she knows what a submissive is. She's read books. She's heard about it. But she doesn't know if she would like that. And she's also like, you want me to be a whore for you and have this and whatever. They go back and forth on this. And she's not sure that she should do it. She's like, I'll give you some time to think about it. But otherwise, I'll be taking everything and you won't have it. So he is manipulating this and blackmailing this into happening. But it really would be the best thing for her anyway, because the next day, her brothers-in-law try to burn her out of house and home and start her stable on fire with them. And Gerard happens to be out for a midnight ride on his horse, and he sees the flames. And so he rescues her horses and her, and then he's like, you're going to stay with me. And she spends that night in his bed without there being a contract in place or anything. And she decides that, you know, if she needs a powerful man to take care of her, at least she knows she'd probably find it enjoyable what he wants to do with her. And where else does she have to go? She has no family. She has no home now. Why not let him take care of it? So that was a lot of explanation. As I said, I wasn't going to explain too much. But why was this a 6-star for me? We'll start with that just real quick here. This is an erotic romance, okay? I want to be clear. I've already seen a couple of people who heard me say this was 6 stars, and I've seen them be a little disappointed in it, okay? So let me be clear. This is an erotic romance. Once these two enter this contract, there is sex in every chapter, okay? There is BDSM in every chapter. There is maintenance spankings, and there's protocol, and there is aftercare, and there is making sure you have 3 square meals a day, and there is honesty, and all these things that would be in almost a high protocol BDSM are in here. So if you don't like those type of things, this won't be for you. If you don't like characters being sex first before feelings come, you won't like this. This isn't that type of story. This is an erotic romance. Really, the only reason he wants her in the beginning is because she seems submissive and she's beautiful, okay? That is what, and it's his enemy's wife. He wants revenge against Garrison for a reason you'll find out in the book. So, I'm not trying to delude anyone, but I love BDSM as healing, and this is chock full of it, okay? And it's the type of BDSM, though this author has that little note in the beginning where she says it's not always safe and blah, blah, blah. An author needs to put that in a book because you shouldn't be learning your BDSM from just a book, right? Which is funny because often the characters in a book learn BDSM from a book. But this is the type where he's teaching her a true dynamic. They're going to live in this dynamic most of the time. That may change throughout the story as feelings get involved, and it isn't just about control and pleasure anymore. But this is the type of story that, again, it's lust first. It's sex first. And through the sex, as any good erotic romance will do, they are bust open for each other. They are stripped down to their base parts, and they're so vulnerable with each other. Both her, because she's going through this physically, and him, when he sees her raw self, it allows him to show her some of himself as well. And so there are so many moments in this book where they're having these connections through the sex. So again, if you don't like that, if you're not okay with it being very sex focused before we get to the feelings, you're not going to like it. And like, that's okay. This is a very specific type of story that I crave. I love this type of story. This reminds me of like In Silence and Submission. It is Pam Godwin. It's Dark Notes. It's that type of thing where someone has always thought sex means one thing. It maybe is a currency. It's so you get taken care of if you're a beautiful woman. But when you find someone who not only wants that part, but also does genuinely care and want to help you, they're going to challenge you. They're going to push you. And when that's included with some whips and cuffs, like, I'm okay with it. Okay, like there's a scene. Here's a couple of cute ones in here and we'll move on. Because like I said, I mean, you knew I would talk about it a lot if it's a 6-star read. He hand makes her cuffs for her. He makes a collar for her himself. Like he does like the welding and the leather work and everything. He makes these cuffs for her that are specially designed to her so that no one else has ever worn them. He will have never used them with anyone else. They're just for her. So it's like there's this symbolism of, yes, he likes to be in BDSM relationships. Those are the kind that he's had. Whenever he's had long-term or short-term ones, that's what he does. But he also is still very aware that you can still make your submissive feel very special and show so much care for them, like the details he puts into their scenes and the way that he listens to what she needs and checks in. Like, that's what I love, okay? And when a dom is at first doing that out of like the protocol of like, this is what I get out of it. I get out of controlling the woman and having her do what I want, and I get the satisfaction of it. But it allows him to be vulnerable too. Because if she's willing to submit everything that she is, well, then he can be willing to share some of his pains and hurts as well. And that is the alchemy and the perfection of a very well thought out BDSM romance to me. When it's not just spank and tickle and saying good girl and sir, when there is like a reason behind it, there's no more type of powerful story to me. Like, it is the most powerful type of story to me. And there were so many sweet moments. This has both period care and he braids hair. Those are two micro tropes that I go feral for. And first there's one where she gets her period and he like cares for her the whole night and does all of these sweet things for her. And she expected him to be mad because it put a pause on what they wanted to do. And he's just like, that's dumb. You know, he's like, you're not just a vessel for me to be used. Like, I'm in this with you, not just as a warm body, which is all she's been to her husband. That's what she was. And to this man who, yeah, he wants to do some kinky shit to her, but he sees her. He wants to give her what she needs. He only asked her to be in this relationship because he saw she might want it. Yes, again, she was his enemy's wife and he wants revenge against him in multiple ways. He wishes he was her first and not that man. Like, all of those possessive things we love. But he also cares about those little things for her. And there's this one scene, I took the quote from this one. I wish I had it right in front of me. I haven't highlighted this yet because I just got it. But she says that, like, he kisses her forehead and she's like, no one's ever been gentle with her like that. And it just touches her so much. Like, there's another scene where after they've had sex, she's lying by him. And there's a line where she says she was looking at him and she was touching the vein in his neck just to feel his life force, like, beating through it. Come on, you guys. Come on. Okay, so anyway, I just want to clear that up beforehand. This is a 5 on the spice scale, right? Because there's sex in almost every chapter. And they don't get into talking about the feelings for a little while. So don't expect that. This isn't a 6-star in the same way that Julia Wolf book is a 6-star, or The Way Forever Your Rogue is, okay? I like erotic romance. I always have. I always will. And so it's not a 6-star the way Elsie Silver is, okay? It's if Elsie Silver and Pam Godwin made a baby, it's this book, okay? So this is a 6-star read for me. And I hope if you are an erotic romance connoisseur like I am, you're going to want to read this. But it's also kinky shit, okay? This one has toys, protocol, anal, maintenance spankings, punishments, gags, nipple clamps, spit. It's got everything, okay? So it also has that. But it was very beautiful. So a new favorite of the year for me. And then, real fast, there's also a follow-up novella called Redbird. And this takes place in their baby-making time. So it's their epilogue, and it's only 70 pages, and it's sweet. And the next book in this series, because apparently there's going to be 4 books in this series, Comes out on the 27th, so it comes out next week, and that one will be called Weston, so I'll be reading that as soon as I can as well. Time to move along here. We have Find Me Along the Shore by Angel Anders. This is book 2 in the Carolina series, and this is the author who did the priest romance I read earlier this year, and that one was Forgive Me, Father, for I have sinned, or Forgive Me, Father, for my sins. And I really like that one, right? That's the one I say is like the sweetest priest romance I've ever read, and it really was. It was very nice. And this one is a brother's best friend, but they also haven't seen each other in about 10 years. And our heroine, Harper, is actually doing a bachelorette weekend with a friend and some girlfriends and the bride, and they end up chartering a boat, which our hero, who used to be, I think was he ex-football or hockey? I can't remember, but he's an ex-sports guy, and now he like runs that. He has a boat and he does these charter things. And so the bachelorette party like charters this boat, and he like gives them a deal because he knows that like Harper is the one kind of planning it. And so they haven't seen each other in a long time. And the night before like they meet at this thing, she sees him at a bar. And she recognizes him, but he doesn't recognize her because the last time he saw her, she was an awkward teenager. And he actually sees her and like makes eye contact and is working his way over. And she's like, ee! And she like disappears because she, again, knows who he is and knows that they're going to see each other tomorrow. And she's like, nope, we can't have this. So sure enough, the next day, her and her friends show up to load the boat, and he's doing the set, and he's like, oh, you're Harper. But I actually really liked how he played it, because he was like, he doesn't like hide that he found her attractive, because obviously like something's gonna happen. And she was like, yeah, I didn't know what to say, so I kind of, and he's like, no, he's like, I didn't know it was you, you're beautiful, you have grown up. And I liked it because, again, it didn't make it too awkward. It was clear they were really attracted to each other, but he's like, yep, I understand like why you did that, because of whatever. So yeah, they have the fun day, but then that night things get a little crazy when the girls start drinking, and there's tequila shots that's done, and there may be some body shots that get done by everybody, and one thing leads to another. And when they get back to, because like they dock the boat, and the girls have like a Airbnb type thing together, and she ends up going back to his place, and they have a hot night together. And then she sneaks out the next day because she's like, I don't want to deal with this. She is being kind of a chicken. She sneaks out on him. And it's one of those where it's like, it's your brother's best friend. Like, why would you do it that way? I don't know. But it just so happens there is a possible hurricane coming through. And so her plane is canceled. And she's not able to leave. And the Airbnb has already been turned back over. So she has no place to stay. There aren't a bunch of hotels in this area where they're at. And so they end up talking to each other again, because she goes back to the bar and he sees her there, and he's like, just come back and stay in my house. We don't have to sleep together again. I'll sleep on the couch. You can sleep in my bed, and hopefully there'll be a plane out soon. So this ends up being, now she's there for like a weekend because the storm does stay there and she's not able to leave. And through this weekend together, they do a lot of talking, and it actually turns into she's going to stay there for longer. I won't get into all the spoilers about that or like why and everything, but she is kind of looking for a fresh start, and I think she's a journalist. Is she a journalist or what? Basically, she can work from wherever, but it leads to her being there for longer. And of course, their feelings aren't going to stay hidden for long. The reason why, so I gave this one 4 stars, and the reason why I didn't give this one more is that there was a suspense element that got thrown in, but the suspense element pushes into a third act breakup that the suspense element wasn't really like a threat. That's difficult to explain, but like the book is set up that there's going to be a suspense element because she has a stalker. We'll just say that. But then the thing the stalker does is like really lame and isn't even like a danger to anyone, but she freaks out that she's put him in danger, and it leads to that. And I don't know, it just made her look so dumb. I'm sorry. And I say that almost over exaggerating it. I had a fun time with this book. And maybe some people wouldn't be annoyed by it, but this hero was great. Okay, like great. I think Grayson's his name, Harper and Grayson. Yeah, he was so like devoted to her. The brother, I won't spoil, but the brother was a very interesting character too. I liked him, and so her acting that way, it just made her seem too childish for him. In my humble opinion, it made her seem too childish for him. So I gave this one 4 stars. It was a 3 on the spice scale. They do some spanking and some anal, and they get pretty spicy together. And there was stalking as a trigger warning. And I still think that this author did a good job, but her third act was a mess. It was a mess. It could have been saved in a couple different ways. I'm not usually one to advocate for the third act kidnapping or the third act suspense because I don't love that. But in this case, you teased it and then nothing. And I'm like, no. Pick one or the other for me. So 4 stars for that, 3 on the spice scale. All right, then I had an arc of Undeniably Infatuated. This comes out on the 23rd. I had an ALC of this from Must Love Audio, and I've been listening to all of these. This is the Boston Billionaire series, and this is a doctor again. He is a pediatric resident, and he's going on a little break. His family's also billionaires, right? He's going on a little break because he made an almost mistake at the hospital because he was being really arrogant about something, and a kid could have died if he hadn't had someone slap some sense into him. And so he's like, I need to reset. So he has a boat. He loves sailing. So he's decided he's going to take a 2-week vacation, get back to nature in his boat, and do that. So when he gets to his boat, his name is Stone, by the way. He gets to his boat and he discovers there's somebody on his boat. And she pushes him into the water because she thinks he's a stalker. And it's Tinsley. Now, Tinsley is she an actress? She's an actress, and she's also currently going to be working on a movie. So she's like a singer-actor type. And she's actually his younger brother's ex-girlfriend. They were together. They were like childhood sweethearts. And they recently, not super recently, but they had broken up a couple years ago. And he's never looked at her as anything more than that because, right, she's been with his brother all this time and she's on his boat and he's super pissed about it. But she explains, like, I just needed a reset. I need to change some things in my life and I'm not ready to do that yet. And I just needed this. And I didn't think you'd be here. So she's been staying on his boat for a little while. And she ends up convincing him to let her go on this trip with him. And he straight up is honest. He's like, okay, you need to wear clothes all the time. You need to not tease me. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I'm being straight with you. You're attractive. I don't need to be feeling gross being attracted to my little brother's ex-girl. Like, I really liked how blunt he was because, you know, she's in these tiny bikinis and stuff. And he's getting hard and she's like flirting with him. And he's like, no. Yes, you're beautiful, but stop. Which, of course, they tease each other mirthlessly about. It's great. And when things do end up getting spicy on this trip, because this is the first part of the story, okay, he is a bit domineering too. So this one does have some sir situations and some having him take control stuff. And honestly, not to be judgy or anything, but part of the reason when I was reading Sovereign, I said some authors just throw that in there just for fun. That's what this type of book is. It's in there just for fun, which is okay. It is okay. It just, I had started this book on audio and then I read that book and then I came back to this book and had taken a bit of the sparkle out of it because I was like, you're lame at this. And I felt bad, but it was still fun. So anyway, they have this fling for, I think they're together for like 10 days. And then they get back and they're like, this is done. Because it would hurt his brother and it would be too messy and it would ruin their friend group. And so they're not going to. But they're both deeply changed by this. And then we skip ahead 2 years. Is it just 2? I can't remember how many years now. I think it's 2 years they skip ahead. And they run into each other at an event again now. And they both have done the things they said they would do when they were on that boat. And now it's a game of how do we stay apart from each other? And even more convoluted, what do we do when this becomes a fake fiance situation? which I won't spoil how it does. So this was great. This was narrated by Andy Arndt and Jason Clark. They're a great pairing. I adore them. And I had a really good time reading this. So I gave it 4 stars. It's a 3.5 on the spice scale, and he's pierced. It does have dynamic play, as I said. There's a bit of a Sir, and she's his little Rose, and he gets a secret tattoo for her, that type of stuff. So it was good. She also has a stalker in this one, because everyone does. Okay, alrighty. Then I did a reread of Viper. I annotated this for a patron. This is the first book in the Naga Bride series. Just as a quick refresher in case you don't know about this series, there's Earth. It's been completely destroyed because of war, like nuclear war happened here. There are now these creatures that have taken over it, and some of them are sentient, including the Naga, who are all different types of snake men who are looking for mates. And so when these group of human researchers land on Earth, because they're trying to see if Earth is habitable or if it could be a place that they could set up, they're confronted by these Naga. And when the Naga smell the women, who they don't have females anymore, most of the females have died, and the females that lived have died giving birth to more Naga. So it's been a very bad situation. And these Naga basically threaten the humans that if you don't give us the women, we're not going to let you live here peaceably. And the human researchers agree to this, and they agree to hand over these 2 women. They have 3 women there, but one of them is supposedly pregnant. And so the Nagas are like, okay, we don't want to take someone else's pregnant mate. But Daisy and Gemma are handed over to these Naga. And basically they try to run away, but now it's a hunt, and Varushka, who is a pit viper Naga, he gets a hold of Gemma, who he knows is supposed to be his mate. Like, the very first, like, line of this book is him saying, like, they don't realize how lucky they are to have females, so we will take their females and covet them, mate with them, and make them our queens to rule the land. Like, that's the type of mentality they have. So I always say when I talk about these are some of the most forceful aliens that I've read that are still, like, good guys. They are completely led by instinct. There are a few things that are ingrained in them, and that is get your mate, subdue your mate, make her yours, take care of her, make her your queen. So they have, like, good intention towards their women, but they're also, like, there's no negotiating, like, I'm gonna have you type of thing. They're all virgins because there are no female Naga, so they're all virgins, and there's a whole series of these that I love. So if you like alien romance, if you like some He's Too Big, if you like virgin heroes, if you like I'm won over by your sexy alien pheromones, like, it's got some of all of it. So loved rereading this, and it was also good to remember because there was a lot of good plot that's set up in here. And I've read 5 books in the series. The 6th one has just come out and I haven't read it yet. And so when I knew one of my patrons wanted me to reread these, I was like, well, I'll just wait, because there's a lot I've forgotten. Some of her books have been pushed or they've taken longer to come out, and you just start to forget stuff. It's just, you just do. But this was a 4-star. It's a 3 on the spice scale. There definitely is some kidnapping. There's injury. It almost feels like dubcon to her sometimes. So there's definitely some of that to be careful of. Then I read Reborn by Meredith Wild. This is the first 3 entries into the Red Ledger series. I was sent this by Page and Vine, and these are books that were already out from Meredith Wild, and they were put out in 2018 in different parts. And there's 9 parts, and they were put into 3 books. And so I was sent these from the publisher to read these ones. And this is about Tristan, and he doesn't remember a good chunk of his life, and he's now a assassin. He's a hitman, a gun for hire. And in the beginning of this book, he gets a job. He's supposed to go, I think they're in Brazil. I'm not sure. I think it's Brazil, and he's supposed, oh yeah, it is Rio. Yeah. And he's supposed to take out this woman, and when he's doing his reconnaissance on her, he recognizes her, and he doesn't know why he does. And actually, he slips up, and she gets a look at him, and she yells out his name. And he's like, how does this woman know who I am? So now, instead of killing her, he wants to confront her and find out how she knows him. And when they finally speak, and he doesn't remember her, and she's like, we loved each other once. We were high school sweethearts. And now he wants to know about his past and the things that he forgot and why they broke up and all these things. So I read these. I don't quite know how I feel about this. It very much is written in, like, it's written more like a mystery thriller, like one of those, I don't even know who to say it on, like that, like Vince Flynn, or that like early 2000s vibe of like action story. Like there is this romance between them, but it's difficult to connect with them. Like this is written in first person, but I still felt like such a distance from the characters. And because, you know, he doesn't remember his history and there's bits and pieces that she's reminding him of as they go, I just don't quite know how I felt about it. I don't know if I want to continue or not. And I feel bad about that because I was sent these, but I don't know. I just don't think that I'm feeling it too well. So I ended up with a like 3 for this one. And it's a 2 on the spice scale for me. And it does have attempted murder, death, violence. There's a pretty violent murder that happens pretty midway through the book. So then the final one that I squeezed in, because I was trying to squeeze in one last book for the readathon. We had a special event yesterday, and so I was trying to read as much as I could. And the other books I'm reading are very large, the ones I'm in the middle of. So I pulled out one of my manga that I had waiting for me. And this is I'll Never Be Your Crown Princess, Volume 3. And I didn't like this volume. I didn't care for this volume at all. And apparently in the author's notes, though, they never meant to write more than 2 parts. And so I'm trying to remember, like, I remember where Volume 2 ended, and I'm like, that was your ending? I don't know. I've tried, you know, not an extensive amount, but over the past, like, 2 years, I've tried a good amount of manga. And some of them liked, but I just find it very difficult to connect with the characters in this type of story. This one didn't progress the romance at all. Again, like where I'll Never Be Your Crown Princess, in the end of the second one, 2 characters had like gotten together. And then in this one, we like split them up and we introduced 2 more characters. And then where it ended doesn't feel like an HEA either. So I don't know. And there wasn't any more romantic scenes to happen. So yeah, I'm not going to go through like where this series starts at or what it's about anyway either, because it's the 3rd book and I don't want to spend time going into it because I didn't care for this. This was like a 2.5, a 3-star. There's no spice in this one. And again, I just didn't connect with the characters, and I think it maybe should have ended with the second one. If this is the end, like if she's not writing more after this one, which I don't know, there might be, if she's not writing more after this one, I wish it would have ended after the second one. So that's my harsh but true thoughts on that. So thank you so much for watching this video. Look at us, we made it right at an hour. Definitely check out some of the books that I've mentioned. I had a great time with a lot of these. I'll put links down below to them. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye.